Hey everybody, so today I'm going to prune my overcomplicated garden right now. I showed you my garden when I put everything in, so today I'm going to get in here. It's been far too long that I haven't pruned it, so I definitely need to get in here and take care of it a little bit. I have tomato plants that I'm going to prune, I have watermelon plants that I'm going to prune, and I'm also going to try to prune some cucumber and see if my cantaloupe plants need to be pruned. So if you're interested in just learning how to or looking into pruning one type of plant, I'll put a timestamp in the description below so you can fast forward through whichever plant that you're looking at most. Otherwise, enjoy the ride. Alright, so I'm going to show you the tomato plants in my garden as well, but this one I have on my deck garden for easy picking for when they're ripe. So I'm just going to show you this one because I've already pruned it a little bit and it'll explain it a little bit easier. So the anatomy of the plant here is, you have your main stem, and then you have your sun branches here, and then obviously you have your fruits here. But as you can see, let's get closer over here. So right here you have what we call a sucker. So these can be pruned off. One reason why you would do that is because if you let them grow, they'll actually turn into full fruiting branches. So if you want to keep them, you can. If they are a determinate, there's two different kinds of tomato plants. So there's what we call determinate and indeterminate plants. So determinate are usually if you live in a warmer climate and they just continually fruit. However, I do not live in a warmer climate, so I have determinate plants that will die when the season dies, essentially. So you're not really supposed to do a ton of pruning, but the advantage to pruning is like when I just pulled off that sucker, if you take those off, then the fruits that you actually do get should be a little bit bigger, and you'll get more of them in that sense. Another thing is as you can see, this stem I pruned quite a bit. You don't need to prune them all like this, but I just did because some of them were dying off a little bit here. But you don't want your leaves to be touching the ground because then they're more susceptible to disease. So not only is that like kind of a branch for insects to get onto your plant, but also if they're closer to the ground, they're more susceptible to disease. So now I'll show you one of my plants that has not been pruned, and we can go through and get that taken care of a little bit too. Alright, so as you can see, I'm not the best gardener. I overcrowded this garden for sure. So whatever tips you have in the comments below, you can give me, but I'm just dealing with what I have right now. So anyways, these two tomato plants got massive. So I'm gonna come in here and try to do as much pruning as I can, because as you can see, there's actually some pretty big tomatoes and stuff in here that I might not even be able to see if they're ripe because it's so overcrowded. So anyways, down here is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. So these plants here, they're dead anyway, so I can just pinch them off here. But you also just don't want too much on the ground here. There's some weeds in here too. Because like I said, that keeps them a little bit more susceptible to disease. Okay, so one thing to keep note of is in situations like this, you can usually just pinch these off. But if they are still healthy but touching the ground, then you'll want to use a pair of scissors because you don't want to strip the plant. So if you peel the plant, then obviously that's not going to be good for them. But if they're already usually dead, they're pretty easy to come off. These tomato plants, and like this one here, I'm going to pop off this sucker here. Again, you don't need to do this. However, it makes it so that your other fruits are producing a little bit bigger. It makes sense to know that if you have less of the plant trying to get as much water and sun and nutrients and everything, the less that's there, the bigger the fruits will be that are there. So I'm just gonna go through all my tomato plants, get all these suckers off, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's over. see here that I cleared out anything that was remotely or even close to touching the bottom to clear away any disease, and any of the leaves that were getting yellow or looked like they already had disease, I cleared those away as well. All right, so when it comes to watermelons, the actual plant will have a certain amount of vines. And from all the research that I've done, you really only want one fruit per vine, which again kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the tomatoes, is that the less you have the plant trying to get energy to, the bigger the one fruit that you have on that vine is going to be. So when it comes to the watermelon here, you can see I have a pretty big size or nice growing watermelon here. If I let the rest of this vine keep growing, there will actually be more fruits. And as you can see, actually right here is a little baby fruit. So if that gets pollinated, then it'll actually turn into another little watermelon. But since we only want one per fruit, after the watermelon, after this first branch here, usually you can just snip this right off, and then that will be the watermelon that produces on that vine. As you can see I have a few other watermelons in here that I will be doing the same thing with. So as soon as you get a decent sized watermelon here, then you can snip off everything else because you don't want anything else growing in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the entire watermelon fleet as well. So I just wanted to give you like a little bit of a closer up look of what I was doing with the watermelon plants. If you didn't see my first video when this happened, these are all looking pretty healthy, so I'm excited about those.
My bad.
Just get out.
We're good. I won't move.
Almost just stepped on that one too, so just get out.
Well, you're where do you want me to go? I won't move. I won't move. I won't move. We're good.
That plant actually survived. So here it is. It is definitely the smallest watermelon plant I have, but I have a little baby on here, so I'm pretty excited that it came back to life just in time to hopefully produce a nice fruit. One other thing I wanted to show you, so as you can see, this vine is a really long vine, but it has not yet produced any fruit. So I am gonna let it grow for a little bit longer, but potentially if it doesn't grow anything in the next little bit, I might just snip it off because it's gonna take energy away from other things, as we already talked about. One other thing is that obviously it took me way too long to do this video, and I was waiting to prune everything because I have little watermelons I didn't even know existed, and especially this one that actually grew outside of the fence. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about that, or if it's just gonna be bunny food, but make sure you're pruning on time. Is that you'll see here, this fruit is pretty small here, so I just want to make sure that it gets a decent size before I snip it off. I could snip it off here right now and it'd probably be fine, but I just want to be a little bit more safe than sorry. I usually like till they get about this size before I snip off the rest. Okay, so as you can see, my cucumbers have kind of taken over, so I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna prune a little bit. I'll show you on this vine, actually, this is one of the longer vines, the actual anatomy of the cucumber. So obviously this is the main stem, this is the leaf, this is a tendril, so that's essentially what'll grasp onto like areas if it's climbing up. And then as you can see here, here's another growth point. So obviously you have the fruit too, but then here's another growth point. So these, to get better production of, again, the fruit that's already on there, you can snip off the growth points. So I'm gonna be going through and doing that with all of the other plants, and then I'll also be harvesting what I can in here because there are a few ready to harvest. So one of the main reasons obviously that I want to clear this out is because we have plants that might be suffering a little bit because there's so much other growth overshadowing it. So as I go through, there's actually some cucumbers in here that I didn't even know were here, so I'll be going through and harvesting the ones that are ready. I did get cucumber or pickled sized, I don't even know. I did get pickling cucumbers, so they are gonna come a little bit smaller. I haven't grown these before, so I'm not sure exactly what size, but this seems like it's about the right size. And then, so I'll see how many of these I can get out of it. Alright, so I decided to plant some cantaloupe or muskmelon this year. I've never done it before, and surprisingly, I couldn't find really any videos to guide me a little bit better, so it has definitely taken over, but a lot of it is just the flower, so I'm not sure if my plants are just not getting pollinated or what, but I actually, when I was digging through here, you can see I have one little fruit here. It looks like something's trying to get to it, but I have one little fruit here. I may discover a couple more as I weed through here, but you can also see that some, because it's so overgrown, some of the leaves aren't even getting sun or nutrients. So I'm just gonna go through and snip those things off as well. I'm going to do it in the same sense that I did the watermelon. So on one vine, I just assume that you're only gonna want one melon. I'll snip it off after the first branch, and then we'll try to clear some of this out too. So here is the aftermath. I didn't clear off as much as what I felt like I did, but as you can see here, I decided to clear off some pretty long branches that weren't producing, and once again, just taking potential energy away from the fruits that are already there. Here's the final look at the garden after clearing everything out. Backside where all the main foliage is. Just to make sure that I talk about a couple things that weren't the highlight of this, I do have a ton of pepper plants, and as you can see here, there's a little blackening of the stem. I think that's pretty normal, but all the research that I did actually says that sometimes when you plant them close to tomato plants, which are obviously all over the place, then sometimes that happens. So I will remember that for next time, but for now I'm just gonna make sure they're well watered and cross my fingers. Here is an update on my grape tomato plant. So as you can see, I have one that's close to being harvested over here and over here. They're doing pretty good. So I was hoping the video wouldn't be this long, but it took me a while to get through everything. I really wanted to get this done a little bit earlier, maybe a couple weeks ago, but it has been so hot the last couple of weeks, 90+ degree temperatures, and I didn't really want to film in that, so definitely take my advice and try to prune a little bit earlier than what you think. I thought I had about 5 or 6 watermelons, and come to find out I actually have 15 growing in there. So at the very least, I got in there and was able to organize a little bit. As you saw when I mentioned the cantaloupe, I had that one little one growing, and I was hoping to find more. I only found one more, so I'm hoping that those take off a little bit better. The cucumbers are definitely taking off more than anything else. I harvested 4, as you could see. I could have harvested probably a handful more. In another couple of days, I'm sure I'll have plenty to pick from, but we can only eat so many cucumbers. So my friends are definitely getting some of those, and then I'm hoping to hopefully harvest some tomatoes in the next week or so here. But I'm really glad that I was able to get in there, especially with the cucumbers, because they were kind of surrounding all my pepper plants, and I was afraid that they were going to take over and not allow those to grow as much. So I did try to train them up the fence here a little bit more, to see if they could take up vertical space rather than horizontal space. So that's everything. If you like videos like this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know what you're growing in your garden, and I will see you next time. Bye.